wake up.
Rain pounds against the cameras as the billionaire steps into the storm. Reporters scream, "Who is the girl who gave you blood?" He straightens his cufflinks, eyes cold. "I don't know who she is," Cassian says, "but I always repay my debts." Hours later, a single clip hijacks every screen. A child in the rain clutching a cardboard sign, "Please save my mom." Cassian stops, stunned. "What do you want? Money?" The girl lifts her chin. "I don't want money. I want you to save Mom. Dad." One word detonates the silence. Dad. Reporters freeze. Cameras zoom. And the man who owns half the city suddenly looks like he's seen a ghost. Cassian steps through the glass doors, cameras trailing. The girl doesn't flinch. "Cassian. What's your name, kid? What do you want? Money?" Lila. "I don't want money. I want you to save Mom. Dad." The crowd gasps. Microphones tilt forward. Someone whispers, "Did she say Dad?" Cassian freezes, thunderclouds flickering behind his eyes. "Kid, don't joke about that." "I'm not joking," she says softly. "Check our blood if you don't believe me." Reporters erupt. Phones stream live. A billionaire's legend collapses in one breath. Cassian turns away, jaw clenched. "Fine," he mutters to his assistant. "Test it. If she's lying, call the police." Lila wipes her face, whispering into her cheap phone, "Mom, I found him. But he doesn't believe me yet." That night, the city didn't sleep. Some waited for the test results. Others waited for the scandal. Only one waited for her mother. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Lila sat on the hospital bench, legs swinging above the floor, clutching her small backpack as flashes of light danced beyond the glass. She could hear the news anchors through the hallway TV. Breaking update, Reed Atlas CEO faces shocking paternity claims. Reporters speculated, dissected, and judged a story that wasn't theirs. Inside his penthouse suite above the skyline, Cassian Reed stared out at the floodlit city he'd built. Every window below him a reminder of control. Control that was slipping. His phone buzzed nonstop. "Sir, this is spiraling," said Victor, his PR director. "We've already issued a statement denying paternity." "Good," Cassian cut in. "Stick with that." "I don't owe anyone an explanation." "But the child's video. She said you're her father. People are—" Cassian turned, eyes sharp as glass. "Then people can keep guessing." By morning, the media storm became a hurricane. "The billionaire and the blood child" blared across every feed. Outside Reed Atlas, fans and critics gathered with phones held high, shouting questions he didn't want to answer. When Lila was brought into his office, she looked small against the glass walls, like a drop of rain inside a storm. Cassian stood behind his desk, perfectly tailored, perfectly distant. "You got what you wanted," he said evenly. "Attention. Cameras. My name in your story." Lila's voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. "I didn't want your name. I wanted you to believe me." Cassian picked up a black envelope, slid it across the desk. "And 500 million? That's more than enough to take care of your mother. No need to play this game any further." She didn't touch the envelope. "You think money can fix everything?" He forced a smile. "It usually does." Her small hands tightened on her backpack straps. "Then you can keep it. Just test our blood." The air shifted, sudden, sharp. For the first time, Cassian's composure cracked. "You think a DNA test will make me your father? You think this He gestured vaguely between them. Earns you a place in my life? No, she said quietly. Mom said truth doesn't need to earn anything. The room fell silent. Minutes later, Cassian snapped his fingers at Victor. Fine. Run the test. Tonight. If she's lying, I'll have the police handle it. Victor hesitated. Sir, do it. Lila's chin lifted. I'm not lying. That night, as she sat in the sterile clinic room, the nurse drew blood from her tiny arm. She barely flinched. Does it hurt? Cassian asked absently, arms crossed. She looked up at him. Only when people don't believe me. He didn't respond. When it was done, Lila stepped outside to call her mother. Her voice softened, barely a whisper. Mom, I found him. But he doesn't believe me yet. They're doing the test now. A weak cough came from the other end. That's okay, baby. You did the right thing. Mom, are you still at the shelter? Silence. Then, just somewhere safe. Don't worry about me. Lila bit her lip. I will anyway. Back at the penthouse, Cassian loosened his tie but couldn't find sleep. The city lights stretched like veins beneath him, glowing, pulsing, reminding. He poured a drink, watched the amber swirl. In his mind, two faces flickered. Lila's, small and certain. Zara's, years younger, eyes full of fire and ideals. He remembered the day Zara stormed out of his life after accusing his investors of fraud, how he'd called her a liar, how she'd vanished before she could defend herself. Now that same look, defiant and unshaken, had returned in a 7-year-old's gaze. Cassian set the glass down untouched. For the first time in years, he felt something unquantifiable, a tremor of doubt. Outside, dawn broke pale and merciless. Somewhere in the hospital lab, 2 vials of blood waited side by side, one bearing the name Cassian Reed, the other Lila Okafor. And by morning, one truth would change everything. The morning light crept through the blinds of Cassian's penthouse as the world waited for the truth. Downstairs, reporters huddled by the gates like wolves, microphones ready to bite. In the sterile quiet of the hospital lab, 2 vials, one marked Cassian Reed, the other Lila Okafor, rested side by side, crimson threads of fate waiting to speak. When the results arrived, Victor didn't knock. He simply stepped in, face pale. Sir, you need to see this. Cassian snatched the envelope, tore it open. His eyes scanned the words once, then twice. Paternity probability, 99.98%. Silence pressed against the walls. The hum of the city below seemed to fade. Tommy Reed, his mother, stood in the doorway, one hand trembling over her heart. Cassian, she whispered, tears already breaking free. You've been a father all this time. He said nothing. His hand crumpled the paper into a fist. She has your eyes, Tommy continued, moving closer. And her courage. She's her mother's daughter. Oh, Cassian, what did you do to that poor woman? Cassian turned sharply. Don't, he warned, voice low. Don't bring Zara into this. But her name was already burning in his mind like acid. Zara Okafor, the girl who challenged his empire when they were still dreamers in university. The one who accused his investors of falsifying medical data years ago. The one he'd called a liar before she vanished. And now she'd sent this child, this living proof. He paced the room, jaw tight. It's a setup. It has to be. Zara's using the girl to get to me. She wants revenge. Tommy shook her head slowly. You think a 7-year-old could plan that? You think love leaves like that? But Cassian had already shut the door. On her words, on his doubts, on everything. By noon, the headlines changed again. DNA confirmed the CEO's secret daughter. Cameras filled the street. PR drafted statements before Cassian even spoke. He appeared briefly before the press, flanked by his legal team. "The test results are conclusive," he said, tone cold as marble. "The child will be cared for privately. I request the public's respect for my family's privacy." The microphones crackled. "Will you be living with your daughter?" Cassian's eyes flickered. No comment. Behind the facade, Lila sat quietly in the back of his car, small hands folded over her backpack. She didn't smile when the driver opened the door to the glass mansion. The walls were too tall, too white. Cassian's staff greeted her with stiff politeness. A nanny handed her a schedule, mealtimes, lessons, speech tutors. Everything arranged, everything controlled. Rules, schedules, silence. She tried to talk to him that first evening. "Dad, can I call Mom?" "Not tonight," he said, eyes never leaving his tablet. "You'll have everything you need here." "But I don't need things. I need—" "Enough, Lila." Her lips pressed together. Later, in her new room overlooking the city lights, she sat on the floor with colored paper and a pen. She began folding hearts, pink, yellow, blue. On each, she wrote a few words in uneven handwriting. "Promise jar. Save Mom." She placed the hearts in an empty glass jar by the window. Down the hall, Cassian stood alone in his office, replaying the moment Lila had looked at him and said, "I'm not lying." He told himself 100 reasons not to believe her mother, but none explained the ache he felt when he saw that same defiance in the child's eyes. For the first time in years, the master of Reed Atlas couldn't calculate his next move. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the armor of logic and pride, a voice whispered a truth he wasn't ready to face. Blood doesn't lie. Rain fell in silver sheets as Cassian's convoy pulled into the underground garage of Reed Atlas. The windshield reflected his own unreadable face. A man the world worshipped, but his daughter feared. On the big screens inside headquarters, every news channel carried the same breaking headline. Rutherford Foundation calls for investigation into Reed Atlas data fraud. Cassian muted the monitors. "Get me the report," he ordered his assistant. Victor hesitated. "Sir, there's something else. One of our investigators traced a lead on Zara Okafor." Cassian's breath stilled. "Where?" Victor opened a file. "A facility called the Anchor Foundation. It's registered as a rehab and wellness center funded by Verena Rutherford's charity branch." The name slid through Cassian's mind like a cold blade. Verena Rutherford, his oldest rival, polished, ruthless, and patient enough to strike when his empire shook. He stared at the photos. An old hospital compound outside the city, walled off by fences and fog. "Rehab center?" he murmured. "For what?" Victor shifted uncomfortably. "That's the strange part. None of the patients' families ever speak to the press. Records show long-term residencies, some over 6 years, including Zara's name, signed in as voluntary." Cassian's jaw tightened. "Voluntary? Zara would rather set herself on fire than sign her freedom away." That night, Cassian traded his tailored suit for a plain jacket and drove himself out of the city, headlights cutting through the wet dark. The Anchor loomed at the end of a deserted road, a gray fortress bathed in floodlights. A guard waved him through after a forged appointment entry. Health Foundation audit. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and decay. The halls were too quiet. Doors lined each corridor, every one with small, fogged windows. Behind one, a woman sat slumped in a wheelchair, eyes dull from sedation. Behind another, a man whispered, "They don't let us sleep." "Not really." A nurse in white appeared, startled to see him alone. "Sir, visitors must be approved." "I'm from the donor board," Cassian replied calmly. "Routine inspection." Her eyes darted left. "Then you should speak with the director. Quickly." He nodded but moved the opposite way, deeper into the ward. On the third door, he froze. The plaque read Z. Okafor. He pressed his hand to the glass. The room was empty. The bed made. Only a folded hospital gown remained on the chair. "Where is she?" he whispered. Footsteps approached, an orderly, lowering his voice. "You shouldn't be here. The ones who ask too many questions disappear." Cassian turned sharply, but the man was already walking away. By dawn, Cassian was back at Reed Atlas. Verena Rutherford's face dominated the morning news, elegant, measured, venomous. "We cannot allow fraudulent corporations to endanger lives," she said to the cameras. "Our evidence suggests Reed Atlas manipulated data in their trial reports. We urge the Securities Board to act immediately." The market responded like lightning. Stock value plunged 10% before breakfast. Victor stormed in, panicked. "She's tanking us publicly. We'll lose $1 billion in 2 days if this continues." Cassian didn't answer. He was watching footage from the anchor on his tablet, every frame of sterile control echoing in his skull. A soft voice broke the silence. "Dad?" He looked up. Lila stood in the doorway, holding her sketchbook. She walked over, flipping to a page where she'd drawn 3 stick figures, one tall, one small, one behind bars. "That's Mom," she said. "She's waiting." Cassian swallowed. "You shouldn't be thinking about that right now." Lila's reply was steady, her mother's fire flickering in her tone. "Mom said power means nothing if you're scared to use it." Cassian stared at her, the words cutting through his armor more deeply than any accusation. For the first time, he wasn't sure whether he was still the man in control or just another prisoner behind his own glass walls. The following week, the world watched Reed Atlas tremble. Headlines screamed, "CEO under fire. Corporate scandal deepens." Stock tickers bled red across the morning screens. Cassian's silence only fueled the storm. But silence was no longer a strategy. It was surrender. So he decided to speak. A live investor forum was announced at City Hall, open press, no scripts. His advisors begged him to cancel. "Sir, Verena controls the narrative," Victor warned. "She'll be waiting." Cassian straightened his tie before the mirror. "Then let her wait. I'm done hiding behind statements." By noon, City Hall was a battlefield of cameras and whispers. Journalists filled every seat, the air tense with the promise of blood. Cassian stepped onto the stage, tall, composed, but sleepless. Lila sat with Tommy in the front row, her small fingers folded tightly around a paper heart. He began with a calm voice, each word measured. "Reed Atlas has always stood for integrity. If I'm guilty of anything, it's believing too much in transparency. Today, I'll prove it." Flashes exploded. Reporters leaned forward. And then, like a predator scenting opportunity, Verena Rutherford rose from the back row, her pearl smile slicing through the air. "Transparency?" she echoed. "Then perhaps the public deserves to see what your integrity looks like." A giant screen flickered to life behind her. Footage played, grainy, time-stamped, of Zara Okafor entering a Reed Atlas lab years ago, pocketing what looked like sealed medical vials. Gasps rippled through the hall. Verena's voice dripped with triumph. "This is the woman who once claimed to expose corruption. Yet here she is, stealing clinical samples for her own gain." Cassian's knuckles whitened around the podium. "Where did you get that footage?" "Anonymous sources," she replied smoothly. "Or shall we say, witnesses silenced by your company." Reporters erupted. Is the footage authentic? Did your former partner commit theft? Cassian forced his breathing steady, eyes darting toward the crowd, where Lila tugged at his sleeve, her face pale but certain. "Dad," she whispered. "Mom said liars forget the small things." He frowned. "What small things?" "The lot numbers." Her words hit him like a flash of lightning. He turned back to the screen, eyes narrowing. The vials Zara supposedly stole bore labels. Lot 232A. But Cassian knew every Reed Atlas trial code by heart. 232A was registered 3 months after Zara disappeared. He straightened, voice cold as glass. "Play that again, and zoom in on the timestamp." Technicians hesitated. "Sir, do it." The enlarged footage filled the room. The date glowed in the corner, July 18th, but the batch code beneath read August 03. Impossible. Cassian faced the crowd. "For the record, this footage is fabricated. Those vials didn't exist when Zara was filmed. Verena, care to explain how a woman could steal something that hadn't been made yet?" The hall exploded in murmurs. Cameras swiveled toward Verena. Her mask slipped for the briefest moment, then hardened again. "This meeting is over," she snapped. She gathered her notes and stormed toward the exit, cameras chasing her down the aisle. Cassian didn't smile. He only exhaled, slow and controlled, as applause broke out in hesitant waves. A small victory, but not peace. Afterward, as Lila walked beside him backstage, she whispered, "See? I told you Mom didn't steal anything." He managed a faint smile. "You did good, Lila." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "Then you'll save her now?" He hesitated. "Soon." That hesitation cost him everything. Because by nightfall, the anchor's internal system logged a quiet transfer. Z. Okafor. Status, relocation approved. No destination listed. No authorization signature. And when Cassian returned home, Lila's room was empty. Her paper hearts lay scattered across the floor like confetti of broken promises. One of them, caught under the lamp, bore shaky handwriting in red ink. Promise jar. Save Mom. Cassian's chest tightened. The silence of the house pressed in like a verdict. His daughter was gone. The storm outside had calmed, but inside Reed Atlas, chaos reigned. The office lights glared past midnight as Cassian's staff tore through files, security feeds, and GPS trackers. Yet Lila was nowhere. Then the email arrived. No subject line, no signature, just a link. Victor hesitated before opening it. "Sir," he said quietly, "you need to see this." The screen came alive with a trembling video feed. Lila sat bound to a chair in a dim warehouse, her wrists tied with coarse rope. Behind her, towers of boxes marked Medical Donations, Anchor Foundation, stretched toward flickering lights. A shadow stepped into frame, broad shoulders, slick voice. Damian Cole, Verena's right hand. "Mr. Reed," Damian drawled, "we finally meet." Pity it had to be like this. He turned the camera toward Lila. "Charming kid, brave too. She kept saying her dad would come. Here's the deal," he continued. "You sign Reed Atlas over to the Rutherford Group, tonight, publicly. Or by morning, this little angel vanishes into one of our donation shipments. And trust me, nobody finds what's labeled charity." The feed cut. Silence filled the room like smoke. Victor's face had gone white. "Sir, we call the police." "No," Cassian said flatly. "Cassian, this is a kidnapping." "I said no." His voice cracked like glass. "You bring in law enforcement, they'll panic. Damien doesn't bluff. She's 7. She saved my life. I won't risk hers." He stood, already pulling on his coat. Victor reached out. "You can't go alone." "I have to." Cassian's tone softened only for a moment. "I let Zara fight her battles alone once. Not again. Not with our daughter." He opened his drawer and removed a small silver device, a hidden transmitter, slim as a pen. "Wire me to the team channel. I'll keep it live. If they hear a gunshot or if the line cuts out for 5 minutes, you send everyone you've got." Victor swallowed hard. "You're walking into a trap." Cassian's eyes hardened. "Then I'll walk carefully." He left without another word. Outside, the city glistened beneath the rain. Cassian drove through the industrial district, his headlights cutting through fog and shadow. The GPS signal embedded in the email traced a path toward the old docks, the same route used by the Anchor's charity shipments. Inside the car, his hands trembled on the wheel. He whispered to himself, each word measured, like a vow he couldn't break. "This time, I protect her." His mind raced through possibilities, negotiation, deception, retaliation, but every image ended the same. Lila's frightened face, the cardboard sign she once held, the words, "Please save my mom." At the warehouse, silence hung like a threat. He killed the engine, stepped into the cold night air, and listened. Somewhere inside, a generator hummed. Cassian's shoes echoed against the cracked concrete as he entered through the side door. The scent of rust and disinfectant filled his lungs. He could feel the wire beneath his shirt, its tiny pulse syncing with his own heartbeat. "Mr. Reed?" a voice called from the shadows. Damien stepped forward, smirking, flanked by 2 men in black. "Nice of you to come alone. Your devotion is touching." Cassian's jaw clenched. "Where is she?" Damien snapped his fingers. A light flickered on, Lila, tied, wide-eyed but unbroken. Cassian took 1 step closer. "You have me. Leave her." "Not yet," Damien said. "First, you sign. Right here. Transfer Reed Atlas to the Rutherford Trust." He held out a tablet glowing with digital contracts. Cassian stared at it, then at Lila, then back at Damien. "Let her go first." Damien chuckled. "I like that you still think you get to negotiate." Cassian's pulse thundered in his ears. He took a slow breath, whispering again under it. "This time, I protect her." And as he reached for the pen, his left thumb brushed the hidden transmitter switch. Far away in the control room at Reed Atlas, a red light blinked. Live signal. Cassian Reed. Active. The clock had started. The warehouse air was thick with rust, sweat, and fear. Cassian stood beneath the overhead lights, their flicker carving sharp shadows across his face. Damien Cole lounged nearby, smirking. But it was the woman who stepped forward from the darkness that made his stomach twist. Verena Rutherford. Impeccable even in the filth, white suit unblemished, red lips curved into something venomously calm. "Cassian Reed," she said, her heels echoing on the concrete. "The great savior of innovation. Here you are, cornered by a child's blood and your own arrogance." Cassian's eyes found Lila. She was trembling but not crying. Her wrists, still bound, glinted faintly in the half-light. He forced his voice to stay steady. "You've made your point, Verena. Let her go. I'll give you what you want." Verena tilted her head. "What I want is control. And I want the world to see it." She gestured toward a camera crew emerging from behind a stack of crates. "You're going to confess on video. Admit to falsifying Reed Atlas's trial data. When the footage airs, your company collapses, my stock triples, and your precious legacy burns to ash." Cassian's jaw clenched. "You'd destroy a child's life just for a headline?" Verena's smile didn't waver. "Oh, come now. You built your empire on blood. Isn't it poetic that hers ends it?" Lila flinched. Dad. He cut her off softly. It's okay, sweetheart. Then, looking back at Verena, his tone changed, low, unyielding. You want a confession? You won't get it. But I'll give you something else. Oh? 5 minutes. Verena's brow arched. Excuse me? You let her walk free, Cassian said evenly, removing his watch and placing it on a crate. In exchange, I'll take whatever you want to dish out. You can beat me for 5 minutes. Film it if you like. But when the clock stops, she leaves that door unharmed. Damien laughed. You're insane. Cassian didn't blink. You're cowards. Verena hesitated, amused but intrigued. 5 minutes, then. If you stay standing, maybe the girl lives. She nodded at her men. Begin. The first hit came fast, a steel baton across his ribs. Cassian staggered but didn't fall. The second cracked against his jaw, blood spraying his collar. He barely felt the third. Pain blurred into rhythm. Time dissolved into breaths. Lila sobbed, twisting against her restraints. Stop! Please stop! Quiet her, Verena hissed. Cassian spat blood and lifted his head. Don't touch her. The clock in his mind ticked like thunder. 4 minutes. 3. Every blow was a promise kept, every bruise a redemption long overdue. 5 minutes, he muttered between teeth, and she walks. Behind him, unnoticed, Lila moved. Her small fingers fumbled toward the edge of her notebook, the spiral coil sharp and bent, just like the trick her mother had shown her in the shelter. If you ever get tied up, use the wire. Her hands shook as she worked the coil into the zip tie. Click, click, snap. She was free. Cassian hit the floor hard as a boot met his shoulder. Damien laughed, wiping sweat from his brow. 5 minutes are up, boss. Verena glanced at her watch. Almost. Lila's eyes darted toward the nearest stack of crates labeled Anchor Donations, Medical Supply. She saw the loose strap dangling, the tower leaning. She yanked it. The entire stack teetered, then fell with a deafening crash. Boxes exploded, spilling plastic vials and fake labels across the floor. The men scattered in panic. Cassian looked up through the haze of dust and pain, his watch's red light blinking. The hidden tracker was active. Sirens wailed in the distance. Verena's calm cracked for the first time. What did you do? Cassian wiped the blood from his mouth, voice hoarse but steady. 5 minutes are over. Outside, floodlights flared. The hunt was coming to an end. The sirens hit first, sharp, rising, unstoppable. Blue and red lights sliced through the warehouse windows as the sound of screeching tires drowned out the chaos inside. Cassian lifted his head from the concrete, dazed and bleeding, barely able to focus. Through the dust, he saw Lila, kneeling, her arms around him, trembling but unhurt. It's okay, sweetheart, he rasped. You're safe now. A thunderous crash came from the far doors as SWAT officers stormed in. Police! Nobody move! Their shouts echoed off the steel beams, boots pounding against the floor. Men in black scattered, trying to run. Damien Cole reached for his pistol, but a bullet shattered the gun from his hand. On the ground! The officer barked. Damien dropped, clutching his wrist, his sneer gone. And then, amid the confusion, another sound rose, a voice over the intercom speakers, a woman's voice, rough, low, but resolute. Verena Rutherford, Damien Cole, this is the truth you buried. Cassian's head turned. Across the warehouse, a screen flickered to life, grainy footage rolling live from an unknown source. There, chained to a hospital bed, Zara Okafor appeared, her face bruised but unbroken, her eyes steady and blazing with defiance. You built the anchor to hide your crimes, her voice said. You used sick people as test subjects, falsified results, and sold counterfeit medication under charity funding. You silenced anyone who tried to speak, including me." Verena froze, every drop of color draining from her face. "Shut it off! Now!" she screamed, lunging toward the nearest console. But before she could, armed officers surrounded her. "I recorded everything," Zara continued. "Every call, every ledger, every threat." The footage shifted, showing Verena's voice caught on hidden audio, her silky tone cold and cruel. "No one will believe her. Make sure she disappears quietly." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras from police body cams streamed the scene live to waiting media vans outside. The truth, the one Cassian had spent years denying, was unraveling before the world's eyes. Verena stumbled as cuffs clicked around her wrists. "You think this changes anything?" she spat at Cassian. "People like us never fall." Cassian stared at her, blood streaking his temple, eyes like burning steel. "Then consider yourself a test case." Behind her, officers dragged Damien away, his smirk replaced by hollow dread. In the middle of it all, Zara appeared, limping but alive, escorted by 2 medics. Her hospital gown fluttered beneath an oversized coat. The moment Cassian saw her, his breath caught. "Zara!" She stopped a few feet away, her expression unreadable. "You came," she whispered. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out. Lila caught him, small hands struggling to steady his weight. "Dad," she pleaded. "Don't move, please." He sank to one knee, gripping her shoulder. "No one hurts my daughter again," he murmured. "Not while I'm breathing." Zara knelt beside them. The sight of the 3, billionaire, rebel, child, under shattered light and swirling sirens, froze even the officers for a heartbeat. Cameras flashed from every corner. Reporters shouted questions outside the barricades. One of the officers lowered his radio. "It's live," he said quietly. "The whole world's watching." Cassian looked at Zara, pain and pride in his voice. "You always said truth would burn brighter than power." Zara met his gaze, a faint smile ghosting her bruised lips. "Looks like we finally lit the match." As Verena and Damien were led away, the warehouse lights flickered, then steadied, bright and white. Lila squeezed her parents' hands, her small voice breaking through the noise. "Does this mean we're free?" Cassian closed his eyes, exhaling a shuddering breath. "Yes, Lila," he said softly. "We're free." Outside, dawn was breaking, and for the first time in years, it felt like the light was theirs. The dawn broke softly over St. Helena's Hospital, painting the world in gold and quiet forgiveness. For the first time in weeks, there were no sirens, no reporters, no chaos, only the hum of the city waking up beyond the glass. Cassian Reed sat alone in the hospital garden, his arm bandaged, his ribs still aching with every breath, but the pain felt almost deserved, like penance. The air smelled of wet soil and lavender, the kind Zara used to keep in her old apartment. He looked up as footsteps approached. Zara moved slowly down the path, her gown replaced by a pale sweater and borrowed slippers. Even bruised, she carried a grace that humbled him. The nurses had offered her a wheelchair. She'd refused. She stopped beside his bench, sunlight spilling over her shoulder. "You should be resting," she said softly. Cassian gave a faint, tired smile. "Rest feels like luxury, and I've had enough of those." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavier than all the words they'd swallowed for years. Then he said quietly, "I failed you, Zara." Her eyes flicked toward him, unreadable. "I let them break you," he continued. I believed lies because they were convenient. I let pride make me blind. You fought alone when I should have been the one fighting beside you." Zara exhaled slowly, her voice steady but fragile. "You can't rewrite what happened." "No," he said, turning to her fully. "But I can make sure it never happens again. Let me protect what you protect." That made her pause. A faint smile curved her lips, bittersweet, cautious, real. "Then start with the ones still trapped at the anchor, the ones who don't have a voice." He nodded. Already in motion. From the inside pocket of his jacket, Cassian pulled a sleek silver folder. Inside, a signed document gleamed under the morning light. The Reed Foundation for Truth and Recovery. A whistleblower fund, a full audit of the anchor, legal grants for the families silenced by Verena Rutherford's empire. "I'm donating my shares," Cassian said. "Every last one from the Rutherford merger. It's time those profits built something human." Zara took the folder with trembling fingers, her eyes glistening. "You're really doing it?" He nodded. "It's the only way to earn what I've already been given." As if on cue, a small voice called out from the walkway. "Dad!" Lila ran toward them, her hair in morning curls, her little hospital bracelet still dangling from her wrist. She carried her glass jar of paper hearts, each one folded neatly from colored scraps. Cassian knelt as she reached him. "Hey, Braveheart." She smiled shyly and pulled one last folded heart from the jar, a red one, smaller than the rest. On it, in her careful handwriting, were the words, "Promise kept. Save Mom." She pressed it to his chest, right over his heart. Cassian's throat tightened. He looked at Zara, then at their daughter. "You did that," he said softly. "You saved me. Both of you." Zara touched his hand gently. "No. You finally listened." The three of them sat together for a long moment. The sun climbing higher, the world slowly returning to life. Later that morning, Reed Atlas reopened its glass doors. Cameras clicked as Cassian, Zara, and Lila entered together. Employees stopped and stared, not at the billionaire they once feared, but at a man walking beside his family, light breaking through the walls behind him. The lobby, once a hollow monument to power, glowed with warmth. Their footsteps echoed, not in emptiness, but in answer. For the first time, Reed Atlas felt alive, and so did they. Thank you for watching to the end. I believe you enjoyed it. We have a lot of other interesting stories like this lined up for you already, so click the image showing on your screen to watch the next